I saw the brochure from Tech, and it rather startled me. I tried it and it worked. And that was a major shift for me. It was a profound experience, really. I had what I can only describe as a period of a month or so of joyous sadness, because my belief system had been essentially shattered, but on the other hand, I was joyful because I'm always welcoming in new ideas. I always see that as an opportunity. And so I interpret this joyous sadness as joy in finding a whole new worldview, and a sadness saying goodbye to my old beliefs. I think that's the price you'll always pay. Your beliefs, there's just a penalty. You say, got to get rid of these beliefs. And actually, I think everybody should probably strive for that feeling every so often. And who knows, next year it could happen again. And maybe I'll have a whole different set of beliefs. Well, my background, highly technical. I don't have any particular credentials for speaking about remote viewing. I've had a little bit of training, some spectacular successes, a lot of failures. But I do know for sure it works. And it's an honor to be here, and thanks, Paul, for allowing me to speak. Now, being a technical person, I've always been more interested in how the projector in a theater works than what's being shown on the screen. I guess I was just born with that, so I became interested in how does this work? How can I formulate what's making remote viewing happen and how to use it? And now I believe I was just led to the various sources that allowed me to answer some of those questions. So after that little period of joyous sadness, for ways I can't even remember, I ended up reading Carlos Castaneda books. And although they're, I think, highly flawed and full of cultural debris and negativity, they show you how to think in an entirely different way. Don Juan Matus thinks in a different way than an engineer thinks. And I just thought it was a beautiful introduction to all this. And I don't read those anymore, but it taught me there are other ways to think about reality than just technical, linear, physical ways. And then from there, picked up lots more material from internet, and finally I was led to the Seth material. And that was a whole other paradigm shift, you might say. Ironically, I was living near Jane Roberts at the time that was going on, but I didn't know about it, and if I had, I wouldn't have been able to receive it and probably been a debunker. But I started reading Seth. There are thousands and thousands of pages. For people who say there aren't any answers and we don't understand how it works, Seth material is highly technical and explains it in great detail if you can wade through all of that. Now, I couldn't wade through all of that, but just about anything you want to know there is there. And that led to other sources. And again, I feel I was attracted to those sources, and I'll get into how that happens. But I'm sure it happens. And not only that, any book, Seth book, any material, anything you read, I now believe, is not static. The books will have in what you need to read. There's lots of anecdotal evidence that people are reading different things in the same book, or different things at a different time. Yeah, hard to believe, but I'll get into why that might be so. After reading Seth, a few other sources came about, and then some now living channels, Abraham Hicks, Lazarus, and there's a couple of dozen more. Now these are living channels, and they also explain the same thing, and it's entirely consistent. Yes, they have different words, but you take all this information and put it together, you get a very consistent picture of how the universe works, and maybe more important, how to use it. How to use this new knowledge to do practical things. Somewhere in there, I've been to the Monroe Institute 3 times now, and had profound experiences there, as Skip was talking about. Not to that extent. But there you can learn how to do it yourself. Bring in these, what Robert Monroe calls rotes, thought balls. When you put out a request to the universe for information, a ball of thought comes into your head. It has all the knowledge in the entire universe about whatever it is you asked for, all the information. And then your brain has to sort that out and filter it through your beliefs and perspectives. And then you can translate it into English, and you'll get a better idea of what is going on. Of course, the road is a much bigger thing than any human can really handle. And so I, at Monroe, learned how to summon those now. I didn't really need the external channels, but they've certainly provided plenty of information and still do, because sometimes other people's filters are different than yours, and it has to go through them. Then I learned there's lots of other ways to get information than just bringing in intuitive information direct into your head. The universe has an amazing ability to provide the information in many, many ways. The next billboard you see, if you put out a request, ask a question, ask and it is given is always true. I now know that. The information will always be present instantaneously. If you can't receive it in a rote, in an intuitive flash, learn how to watch the next billboard you see, turn on the radio, pick up the next book you happen to be inspired to feel. Look at the license plate in front of you. Who's being interviewed on the radio today? It will be the right person, and I'll tell you the right thing. Maybe remote viewing training should emphasize a little more of that. And the universe will be persistent about presenting this information. You have to be a real techie, hard-headed techie to ignore all of that. It's going to be all around you. Now, I've proved that to myself. Sometimes it's obscure, and it used to make me angry. Why are you so obscure? If you have something to say, tell it to me in English. Don't beat around the bush. Well, there are reasons why it's obscure. After I came back from Monroe Institute, by the way, there was some bizarre PK events that happened to me. I don't have time to get into, but it's a powerful experience. I recommend it. Perhaps I should have called this discussion quasi-meta remote viewing, because I didn't use any protocols in all this. Just following my inspiration. Maybe pseudo-quasi-meta remote viewing. Just let's get some fun acronyms out there. Or MV for short. Now, throughout all time, the sages, teachers, great teachers from ancient writings, the modern channels, modern teachers, have been trying to answer these same questions. They didn't have the framework to answer these questions years ago. I mean, I'm in the computer business, amateur physicist. We've got a lot of new concepts now, like virtual reality, that they didn't have. They did the best they could, trying to translate this rote that comes in their head. They asked the question, how does the universe work and what should we do? this rote comes in, they try and translate it into their language. The concepts aren't there, but they come out with the best they could do, and we try and interpret that. I'm saying, well, now we have a much better framework to do it. Let's bring in that information. Everybody can do that. Bring it in yourself. Don't even bother with the old writings. It's all available to you directly right now. What do you want to know? Ask and it's given. Now I'm going to say a lot of things about my filtering of the information I got. Putting it into a technical perspective, that was my bent. How do I frame this information that I'm getting into a framework I can understand? Being scientific, I wanted it in that kind of a framework. And at least a framework I could understand and work with. I mean, there's a lot of New Age terms and so on that sound really good, but they don't mean anything. You got to have a definition. What is vibration, love, vibes, the whole gamut? That's fine. You can say a sentence full of those words. What do you do with that? I mean, other people may understand. They may have their own private translations, but I didn't. I mean, energy is a particularly loaded word. Now, to an engineer and scientist, energy is a very well-defined term. And when somebody says, I'm flowing the energy toward healing, that doesn't mean anything to me. What can we translate that to? What could I translate that to? Now, Seth said some very startling things. First of all, you create your own reality. And all of the others that I've come in contact with say that too in different ways. And another thing they all say, and I don't mean just casually, they say it many different ways with great emphasis, everybody gets their own private reality. It's very important. There's some things you just can't explain without accepting that. You see the horse here? This lectern is different for every one of you. In fact, it may not even have existed until I called your attention to it. The sages are very specific about that. And there's some experiments you can do to demonstrate that. Not only that, the reality, your physical 3D space-time reality, does not extend past the doors. There was a movie, The 13th Floor, which I really liked. It showed what happened when somebody decided to stray outside the part of reality that had been created. There's a lot of flaws in that movie too, but that part's to some extent accurate. They go out, there's nothing there. That's really not how it is. It's more like the holodeck on Star Trek, a virtual reality system, or an arcade game. When you do try and go out the door, the reality is instantiated out there. It was on the holodeck wall. Now it's physically real for you. This was all stated very explicitly. This is a virtual reality. This is not anything but a software construct, as if a computer was running a model. There are good reasons for that, too. I want to get into that. Everybody's running their own private model. Sure, it's the same. There's a lot of commonality. It's sort of like if you go into a video arcade and want to play Cops and Robbers or Space Cadet. There can be lots of the video games running, the same game, but each person is playing their own. Now, actually, they're all being linked together in the background. There's a lot of activity going on that you're not consciously aware of. It's synchronizing everything to keep some coherence. Because you are not your physical body. Most of the speakers here have said that. You are really a conscious entity out in non-physical reality. I want to describe a bit about non-physical reality. It's almost indescribable. It's very, very different than here, but it's teeming with life. And you're out there. Mostly, you're out there. An aspect of you has decided to play this game, and that's what it is. In non-physical reality, manifestation is instantaneous, and all the information in the universe is available to everyone all the time. There are no secrets and no mysteries. It's true here too, but we've put up this veil for reasons I'll get into. So, Seth also described technically how it works. What is the physics of the real physics of the universe? Now, a physicist inside this, what Seth calls camouflage reality, is a entity inside of a model, a virtual reality, a computer game, trying to describe the nature of the game. He's not even aware. In principle, he wouldn't even be aware he is a projection into a game. There's no way in theory he could even figure out what the physics of the machinery he's running on is. But we're different. We can. You can just ask. It would probably never figure it out unless you ask, but if you ask, you'll get the rote and it will explain how it works. And actually, Seth did that in great detail. And I think a computer database model is better than physics model for it. I'm translating what he said. There's one particle only, consciousness unit. The universe is nothing but consciousness. Consciousness always seeks to expand, and that means these consciousness units cluster together. So the real, what you call real physics, I guess, would be the nature of consciousness units and how they interact, and that would be about it. Everything else is an emergent property. It's like describing the computer, but you can put any kind of software you want on it. Now, people, the real you, inner being, is a much more expansive consciousness than the way you think of yourself here. It does have that infinite knowledge, and it has the ability to follow many, many threads at once. They never use abstractions in non-physical universe because you have the astounding capacity to fathom the entirety of anything. We use abstractions here because it's a shortcut. The number 1 million, you don't have to give somebody a million things. You just say the number 1 million, or a person's name, references the person. The non-physical entity has that astounding ability to just fathom the entirety of it. You don't need a name. You transfer the entirety of the person. Okay. There's some very important principles that I learned from all this. They were astounding to me too, but I've proven many of them, at least to myself, to be true. And one was, well, I gave you the first one, which was we all get our own private reality. There's no possible way you could harm anyone else. They are characters in your game. It's not possible. That's been stated many different ways. I guess the attitude is it's your game, and you wanted to play cops and robbers or whatever, and go have fun at it. Shoot them up. If you want them in there, some bad guys in there, let them shoot you up. But there's no real damage you could do anywhere. Now, you can make an agreement with somebody else that you're the robber and he shoots you, and that's fine, but it's still part of the game. That principle was there's no assertion. It's a universe of attraction. You can, as Dr. Mitchell said, you resonate with something and it comes to you, whether it's information, ideas, or even physical manifestation, because everything physical is really just a software construct, and the universe has the capability to instantiate anything you can imagine, anything at all. And I've demonstrated that to myself, too. And that's common knowledge among some circles. One example that was humorous that I got from Bevy is if you wanted flying pink elephants in here, if that's what you wanted as part of your reality, you could do that. You would have created them. It's just software. It's no big deal. It doesn't matter what it is. However, if you did do that, and other people didn't want them for obvious reasons, your game would diverge a little bit from them, and you wouldn't encounter them when the flying pink elephants were around, or, unless they agreed to, of course, some of them may well agree, or it would be called a mere anomaly and be swept under the rug, or one or the other people, well, each person would think the other was schizophrenic. They'd both be right. In my reality, I've got them, and yours, you don't. Everything else is in common. Anyway, that's a very important principle, that there is no assertion. You can only attract things. What you give your attention to is attracted, and that applies to things you don't want also. You start worrying about bad things, the universe doesn't care. That's an attraction of it. So it's important. One of the practical fallouts of this is turn your thoughts away from things you don't want. It sounds frivolous, but you must do that. Everything you put your attention on is going to be amplified and attracted to you. Never worry about anything. Worry is putting your attention on something you don't want. If you're not attracting something, it can't come to you. You're completely invulnerable. How's that doing? Oh, it stopped. Well, that was a screensaver. I'm sorry. I was assuming that was up there all the time. Don't know how to turn that off. Now, what I just described was the law of attraction, according to Abraham. You have to resonate what you want to get it. And everything you resonate with, you will get. Some call that vibrational matching. So it's very important not to even think about the things you don't want. Now, in non-physical reality, everything somebody thinks about manifests instantly, and all the information is available instantly. Why are we here? Why did we create this game? Well, in non-physical, if they wanted to play a game, they really couldn't do it. If you want, what good would a poker game be if you always know what the opponent has, and he always knows what you have? You can't have humor. There can't be any element of surprise. And it was found out long ago, what you need is an environment of contrast with this veil. Shut down all of that flow of information. Basically, you said, I want to go and have a fun game, and I want to have some bad guys in it. You can say that. I want the bad guys. I want lots of contrast. I want to have a lot of contrast and things to cause me to focus energy. Focusing energy, that is strong intent toward any idea, is the energy source of the universe. What really makes it run. Non-physical reality is a very diffuse kind of energy. What really gets the juices going is to having a lot of contrast, having a lot of bad things around that you can choose from, but could not hurt you unless you invite it. All kinds of different points of view, limited access to information, and you very much wanted wanting. Wanting is what spurs you to come up with new ideas and have concentrated intent. The rest of the universe really appreciates all of us who come here and do that. It's a much stronger energy flow in this environment than it is out there. Abraham said this is the leading edge of thought. This is the advance. And it's also a lot of fun. I mean, it is a game and you came to play it. Have fun with it. If you're not having fun, something's wrong. This is very important to have fun. The end result appears not to matter. It's the flowing, it's the process that matters. Once you've created something, that's just there. It's just described as the sculptor. Once he's finished with his masterpiece, he doesn't just sit there and look at it. No, he has to go do another one. That's what matters to non-physical universe. The end result doesn't matter. They knew all of that anyway. You're not here to learn anything. They already know all of that. Past lives have nothing to do with it. Beyond the extent as if you were in a video arcade and playing the game one week and then go in the next and play it again. Maybe you have a little more skill. There was nothing to learn. Nobody wants you to justify anything. Just wants you to have fun. Focus your intent. Now, it's interesting, another point. The universe benefits from your focused intent, whether you're having fun or not. It's actually powering the universe. You want it, they'd like you to have fun, but if you're having a terrible time, that's okay. They're still benefiting from the energy. And it's also important that some people have a terrible time sometimes. Nobody came with that intent, but everybody knew that was the risk. And the game wouldn't have been any fun if it hadn't been a risk. You hear a lot of people saying, oh, we want world peace and calm and tranquility and no problems. You had that before you came here. That's not why you came here. World peace is definitely not wanted. The contrast is wanted, and it's perfectly balanced. Everything is working perfectly. Because nothing bad can come to you unless you are resonant with it. There can't be anything wrong. Now, I said you each get your own private reality. If you want environmental catastrophe, you can have it, earthquakes, ozone layer problems, and all of that. Others who don't want it are not going to experience that. There'll be a bifurcation. Each group can get their own private. Remember, it's all software. A lot of people don't know that, but that's part of what caused the contrast. Everybody knew all of this when they came here. There probably wouldn't be, I'm sure there wouldn't be, the contrast that's making it all so interesting. Everybody came with the intent of being happy and getting what they want, but they also came with the risk knowing they might not know that. And that made everything come out perfectly balanced. Now, there are lots of other realities besides this one, even on the planet. They're out of phase with us. They're, like I said, with the pink elephants, they have other realities that are from a little bit different than ours where we can't quite perceive that. You probably see those as things like Bigfoot and so on. They occasionally phase in and out. Their physics is different. There's really no intent to interact. UFOs, Seth described in detail, they're out of phase a little bit more. Their physics is so different that they aren't even stable here. And then there's lots of realities that are so alien that you wouldn't see them at all. Also kinds of realities that are not spatially contiguous, where an entity there feels like they're a clump, but they're actually distributed in space, kind of diffuse. And anything anybody can imagine. Every thought ever thought still exists. There's no destructor for a thought. Every thought you have is eternal. All thoughts think. All thoughts follow the same law of attraction and join up with other thoughts like them. They resonate with each other. All the thoughts that resonate to each other form thought forms, constantly assembling. With all that debris out there, it's a good thing that the only thing coming to your experience is what you resonate with. You'd be covered with parasites if they could assert. Let's see how that applies to remote viewing. This talk's mainly not about remote viewing, but you've got to resonate with the target. Dr. Mitchell said that too. But there's a warning here. If you do resonate with the target, you're attracting it into your experience. You've got to be a little careful there. If you're going after criminals or murderers and so on, you're resonating with that. It can't help but become more probable in your own experience. If you got to do that, be lighthearted about it and laugh about it, and don't do it too long. If you're remote viewing, try and pick up the information from other places besides just your own intuitive. Like I said, the billboards and what books you happen to stumble on and so on. Maybe that's not fast enough for most people. Now, in order to be really powerful at this, you have to resonate with the real you, inner being. Margaret Monroe calls the I there. That's the real you. You're just a projection out of that playing this particular game. The I there, the real you, actually has several more bodies on the planet at any one time. They're called counterparts. You'll know it when you meet one. They can often be your biggest enemy for the purpose of contrast. Often people come in pairs to play off against each other and so on. Again, for the fun of it. One's the cop, one's the robber. Some even come with the intent of getting bad, shot or so on. They know there isn't really death. You can't die. You're not your physical body. And most of the people we hear say death is a really fun thing. All those near-death experiences, Daniel Brinkley and Phyllis Atwater. Seth said he's done it hundreds of times. He thinks it's really neat. It's kind of, it seems misguided to think that it's a bad thing. Now, I personally like it here, so I'm not in any hurry to leave. But from the non-physical perspective, it's no big deal. If you want to come back, that's really easy. And you will. It's like playing the video game in the arcade and you get shot, and you say, well, the risk was fun. I'm going to put another $1 in and do it again. If there hadn't been that possibility, the game wouldn't have been any fun. Now, in order to manifest things, you do want to enlist the assistance of your inner being, I there, whatever. Your I there and everything else that's non-physical is always joyful. They say always loving. There's probably a technical reason for that. No good reason to explain it except what does that mean and why would that be so? Well, every thought they have manifests instantly in their experience. I think you'd learn very quickly that if you have the slightest negative thought, you're going to bring something into your experience instantly. Very quickly learn never do that. And they don't do that. And if you have negative thoughts and that's defined as thoughts that make you feel bad, they're going to disconnect. They cannot resonate with you. Well, they could, but will not. You've lost your life force flow when you do that. Lost all your power. You're on your own now. That's why another good reason to be happy, get rid of negative emotions. It sounds frivolous. How are you going to correct past mistakes if you don't dwell on things? How are you going to be profound? A lot of people believe you got to suffer to get anything important done. Well, from the perspective I've been reading, that's nonsense. Never, ever want to entertain a negative emotion. Now, physical 3D space reality is set up with what's called a buffer of time. A real advantage for us. All thoughts that you ever have exist, but they'll have no effect unless they're held for 17 seconds. That number keeps coming up. A delay has been put in, 17 seconds. That prevents all the random little thoughts and bad thoughts you have from just going out and influencing anything. Anything under 17 seconds, no effect. You can think all the bad stuff you want, feel bad, feel angry at something. And that's one shield. And anytime you take your attention away, in the middle of that 17 seconds, the whole timer's canceled. You've got to start it over. Now, it turns out that it's much harder to do than most people think. It has to be a pure thought directly on that subject for 17 full seconds without diverting, without having countering thoughts. Something to practice. Once you've achieved the 17 seconds, that's a thought form. It exists. It's a real thing now. It's got a life of its own. Nothing you can do about it. It can never be destroyed. You may not have access or be resonant with it, but it's there. Now, if you want that thought you just had for 17 seconds purely to come into your experience, you've got to resonate with it. Your beliefs will get in the way of that probably, if it's something too far out of line. Now here it takes actually, although that thought form you've just created will generate and expand on its own, it's possible for you to help it along a little bit by doing that 3 more times. Apparently 3 times doing that at different times is enough to create enough energy into that thought form that it can be a physical object. It will now become a physical object. Again, it may not appear in your game unless you match that. Anyway, back to what I was saying about being happy. Russell Targ said, appreciate things, meditate. Thank you. What you're doing, your inner being is always happy and joyful. You want to be resonant with it. What are some practical ways to do that? Meditation is one. You're not really happy, but you shut down all the resistance, all the negative thoughts. And it's just your natural state to be resonant with yourself. You'll only disconnect if you're starting to, quote, vibrate out of phase, as Dr. Mitchell said. You'll get a disconnect. Meditation is a good way to stop this out of phase resonating. An even better way is appreciation, and Russell said that. It just seems appreciate. When you get out of bed in the morning, start loving and appreciating things. It's a way to get rid of the resistance and the negative thoughts. Don't dwell on the things you don't like. Look around, just appreciate everything you can. You get this really good feeling. Now you're connected. That's as good as meditating. And that would apply to remote viewing too, I would think. Being happy, connected to the real source of the information ought to greatly improve that. I don't have any evidence to support that, though. I've heard people say they get angry and they can do things. Actually, that's true, too, because when you get really angry, now you're really flowing a lot of energy, but you're not connected. But the energy flow is still there. One of the things about this manifestation is that in order to be resonant with what you're asking for, it has to feel like it's already there. That's what it means by being resonant with what you're asking for. If you want a lot of money, you have to feel rich. There's no problem with a lot of money. The universe can provide trillions if you want it. But you have to feel like you already have it. Now that's kind of a bummer, I think, because then it's not such a wonderful surprise. By the time you can actually manifest something physically, you're used to it. That's what it means by being resonant. So it's just, well, there it is. But that's the way the universe works. Nothing can be done about it. There's no entity in the universe that can avoid law of attraction. Now I want to describe something else that Abraham had brought up. Abraham Hicks on a live channel. Besides the senses you're used to in your solar plexus are 2 more sensors. I don't know if there's a physical entity there, but it's often described there. There's a sensor for the amount of, quote, non-physical energy or resonance that you're flowing. That's felt as the intensity of an emotion, and that's what the universe is interested in, the intensity of the emotion. The more, the better. People, I guess in the Western world, Stop trusting that, stop feeling it, but it's probably your most important sensor. How strong is your feeling? It doesn't have anything to do with how good or bad, it's just how strong is the feeling. That's what's powering the universe. You want to learn to be in tune with that. There's a second sensor, and that is whether it feels good or bad. That one applies to only you, how you feel. The universe doesn't care about that one. Well, it probably cares, but it's benefiting from the other one. It's up to you to sense that, a bad feeling and a good feeling. These are not just vague terms then. These are measuring some real things that are really important to you. And it's important to be sensitive to that. How good does it feel, one? And keep it on the feeling good side. And so you've got to practice that and tune into it. Every time you feel a negative emotion, don't think, oh, it's profound. I'm going to go feel that negative emotion and I'll be a better person for it. It's not so. You have the ability to drop that thought immediately and switch to something else. Start appreciating. It's not a cop-out. If something feels bad, just drop it. It's always possible to find some other thought that feels better than that. Get that emotional sensor, the feeling good, bad sensor up on the good side quickly as possible and try and hold it there. Just an example, we've got two independent sensors. The strength of the energy flow and how good does it feel. The way an emotion feels is an indicator of the resistance. As if you had a clogged filter. You're flowing all this energy through you, but you've got a filter that's all clogged and the pressure's building up. That causes all kinds of physical symptoms. Matter of fact, it is the only cause of illness. The only cause. Clean that filter, let the energy flow through. Or you've got a hose. Imagine energy flowing through a hose through your body, and it's pinched off. The pressure builds up. You're going to feel bad. It's that pressure difference that makes you feel bad. And if the pressure difference gets high enough, you're going to get sick. You'll get a symptom. And if it gets really, really bad, you'll croak. And then it's unpinched again. Everything's flowing back to normal. And again, what I'm getting the impression of is this is not just vague stuff. This is real stuff. You can go try experiments and watch it work. Actually, I had several experiments. I was going to wait till the end, but it feels like a good time to talk about them now. Before I came here, I thought we're going to just try some experiments, and this wasn't one of them. This occurred to me after I got here. But one was to show law of attraction, and I would say think of two things for 17 seconds. I just picked two things. One was a yellow Volkswagen Beetle, the old kind, and one was a circular cloud. A ring in the sky. And I picked the ring in the sky because I'd seen that happen at a Seth conference. People decided they were going to make a ring-shaped cloud on a cloudless day, and there it was, pictures on the internet. Does that prove that? Well, you could call it a mere anomaly. A lot of people would. The yellow Volkswagen was something that's plausible, but not impossible. It fits into most people's belief system. Would you see a yellow Volkswagen? How many people will see a yellow Volkswagen? Just think about it for 17 seconds, drop the subject. Probably see one driving by. But after I'd picked that, Russell showed a slide with a yellowish Volkswagen and a turbine engine strapped on it. I thought, well, that's too soon. But that doesn't really hurt the experiment. You could still probably see one out there. And another one I thought of, because somebody else has suggested it before, was blue glass. I was going to suggest that. And I walked by out here at the Herbalife room, and there's the whole table covered with blue glasses. Well, the stuff really works. You have to do this yourself. Experiment with it. What's the timing? Beg your pardon?
It's time.
Oh, okay. Let me, if anyone wants to see the graph that came from this. Wow, look at that. You know, normally that graph would be right down there on the baseline. Well, that's pretty impressive. I mean, that's impossible to do unless this creating I'm talking about really worked. That's a random number generator in that computer, a very good one. You've actually done PK on that. I guess I have to get down. I had a lot more subjects to cover, but enjoy your lunch. Thank you.